Now, given that it's said that Shrewsbury is the most haunted town in England, and I've already produced a vlog on that, what I'd like to do now is look at some other places in Shrewsbury that I can't find a ghost story associated with. Maybe there's a legend associated with it, but not directly a ghost story. And I thought I'd just introduce you to those. I mean, certainly if there are stories associated with them, they're associated with my childhood. And so indulge me, I just wanted to put them in. In the Dingle, there's a statue to Sabrina, the goddess of the River Severn, or the Roman goddess of the River Severn, I should say, because it was adapted from the original goddess, Welsh goddess, Chafran. And this statue isn't that old. It was presented by the Earl of Bradford of Weston Park in 1879. And on it is an inscription of a poem by John Milton, The Myth of Sabrina, who was believed to be a nymph who was drowned in the Severn. Well, here by the Welsh Bridge is the headquarters of the Morris Company, which is a Shrewsbury family business, largely these days associated with property, probably because they seem to be able to push through the various planning committees their plans, but I don't want to cast too many aspersions on them because of they're still a very paternalistic company. They're probably best known for Morris's lubricants. Those are oils particularly used by farmers for farm machinery, but they were started off by James Kent Morris in, when was it? Yeah, he opened a shop in Frankwell, a grocery shop in Frankwell, so the other side of the Welsh Bridge, in 1869. In 1889 he launched a candle factory. 1900 the store moved to Wylde Cop. 1911 he developed the Morris Bakery. His second son, also named James Kent Morris, developed the oil business for which they became famous. 1913, on Pride Hill, there was a Morris's Cafe that I remember very well. This headquarters was built in 1922, and the cafe was expanded into a new store on Pride Hill. What more can I say? Yeah, they've got in more property, nursing homes, that type of thing these days. They sold off the food, the supermarket businesses, but you know, still very much associated with the town of Shrewsbury. Now, John Frederick Morris II, who founded Morris's Oil, also built what is known as the Morris Hall, although he insisted on calling it the Belstone Hall. It was originally known as Owen's Mansions, was built in 1582, a very good example of smaller mansions of Queen Elizabeth's reign. And the gardens went all the way up nearly to the new St Chad's Church. In the 1930s, the mansion itself was demolished and a bank was erected on the forecourt. And the street in front is still known as Bellstone because of the bell-shaped boundary stone that's found there. So Morris himself decided to develop the old building, partly in an arts and crafts style and partly retaining the old style of the building. and he left this to Shrewsbury. Now, Morris himself was a Fabian socialist, so although the company is very paternalistic, he himself was a Fabian socialist, and the Morris Hall had a sort of fundamental part in sort of good activities, if you like, in Shrewsbury. Even when I was a child, I remember sort of worthy causes coming from the Morris Hall. I think I actually even went to a few dances there, and they were absolutely wonderful. I think it was opened in 1936, and the plaque was unveiled by George Lansbury MP, who I'm pretty certain was another Fabian. So there was this great tradition of paternalism and Fabianism, and it's still noted for charitable causes. Great place. Well, we're now on Town Walls, which looks down to the River Severn's floodplain down on those meadows below, but overlooks towards Wales. So these walls were clearly to keep the Welsh out. And there's still a tower on these walls, known as the Walls Tower or the Wingfields Tower, the only remaining medieval watchtower from the former walls of Shrewsbury. And of course, it was built by the Angles of King Offa's time of Mercia, so that they could overlook what the Welsh were getting up to and prevent an attack on the town of Shrewsbury. Not that it always did prevent it. The Welsh did come and burn the town on a number of occasions. Now, I know it so well because of actually my dentist was in the house next door, which I see now belongs to the Shrewsbury High School. But yeah, this was my dentist's. Now, what I hadn't appreciated was that many of the buildings in the square have witch mark or apotrapic marks on them. These are generally to keep away, evil spirits, and often they contain a V or an M for Virgin Mary, or overlapping double V's, also meaning Virgin Mary, but Virgo Virginium. I'd not been aware of them, but quite a lot around here apparently do have such marks. This is it's certainly one of the most impressive buildings in Shrewsbury, and it's John Ireland's mansion. John Ireland was a local wool merchant, as I've mentioned. Shrewsbury was a centre for the wool trade, or for drapers in particular, but the wool trade with Wales. And as a result of the profits, John Ireland built this house. I think he got into debt doing it, and it was known as Ireland's Folly. It later became a department store, as I remember it as a child. Maddox is long since closed. And like so many of these wonderful buildings, there should be a ghost story associated with it, but I can't find. Now, these passageways in Shrewsbury are known as shuts, and they're all over. But maybe the most famous is Grope Lane. And you can imagine the stories that came about, not least as Shrewsbury's original name was Scrubbersbury. And these have been discounted and cleaned up. but I've done a little bit of research on it, and it would seem that the original name was even more explicit, because it was Grope. I don't think I can say the word, C-U-N-T Lane. And yes, indeed, there were many Grope Lanes in medieval towns in Britain, and they designated the fact that they were indeed a red light area. And now as you come up Grope Lane, you reach Bare Steps. And we were always told that they were called Bare Steps because this is where bear baiting took place. And I'm sure that's true. And they join Fish Street to Butcher's Row, so they join what had been where the fish were sold to where the meat was sold and slaughtered. But the sanitised story is, and I think there's probably some truth in both, that they stand where an old pub known as the Bear was. They were restored when I was a schoolboy, and a good job they made of it too. So an interesting part of town, despite not being sure of the exact origin of the name. Running down from Bare Steps, and therefore St Alkmund's, is Butcher Row, which was originally the butchery market. And on it is the Prince Rupert Hotel that I speak about separately. But it's worth just having a look at this one wonderful old building. Not least this is where my doctor's was. And the waiting room was this wonderful old wooden panelled Tudor room. Quite incredible. Quite incredible to think I used to go there. And my biggest memory, though, was these huge glass syringes that I had no idea what they were for. But of course they were for enemas. But I was frightened to death that I was going to be injected with one of these huge glass syringes. Now, there's the old market hall in the square, which is a famous building in Shrewsbury, but the actual market is a 1960s building that replaced the old Victorian market that I just about have recollections of birds hung up in cages for sale, that's all I could remember, to be honest. The new market is much unloved, but I would say, the building, I would say the market itself is probably one of the best markets in England. Fantastic selection of fresh food, really fantastic, and many very interesting shops. They hew and they hack and they chop, and they finish the hole, they stick up a pole in the place that's still called Wylde Cop, and they pop your grim, gory head on the top. Shrewsbury's golden age was really from the 12th to the 15th century, and that was based on a monopoly that Shrewsbury had over the Welsh wool trade. So Shrewsbury had many wealthy wool merchants, but later on there was finishing of woolen products going on in Shrewsbury, and so the Drapers became wealthy in themselves. In fact, in 1334, Shrewsbury was the 7th wealthiest town in England outside London. And I think it was shortly after then that Shrewsbury was offered the chance to become a city, and the burghers of Shrewsbury turned it down. I think preferring to be a big fish in a small pond, I'm not too sure, but ever since we've been known as proud Salopians. Now, there were a few things that sort of encroached on this monopoly, but Shrewsbury carried on quite well, adapting. You know, as I say, it got into the finishing of the cloth. A mercer's company was formed in 1425. And, you know, it really rose to dominance, particularly in the 6th century, 16th century, because it really was, you know, the main way of certainly Mid and North Wales wool being exported to England. What really happened, though, was during the Civil War, this monopoly was both attacked and the wealth really left Shrewsbury. However, before that happened, in 1570, the Draper's Hall, they built a Draper's Hall anyway, which was originally known as the Guildhall of the Company of Drapers, and it's now become a boutique hotel. But it's a beautiful building, which you can see here. 1576 it was built. That was the date. Yeah. So it's now become a boutique hotel, but it's a lovely building opposite St Mary's Church. Now, I've mentioned that the library was the original Shrewsbury School, but where Shrewsbury School is now located was Shrewsbury Workhouse. However, I find that prior to being a workhouse, it was a foundlings hospital. I believe the foundlings hospital didn't last for many years, and subsequent to that, it was used to house Dutch prisoners. But eventually, no, not in 1834, it was before then. In 1784, 5 Shrewsbury parishes got together to purchase the former Shrewsbury Foundling Hospital and turn it into a workhouse. From what I can gather, despite conditions in workhouses being universally bad, Shrewsbury was actually fairly humane compared to other workhouses. In 1834, it closed with the amalgamation of the Shrewsbury parishes with the Atcham parishes, presumably because there is the old Atcham hospital was a workhouse, and presumably it was all moved to Atcham. So it was then bought by Shrewsbury School, who, as I say, were originally in what is now the library. However, in 1905, a serious fire broke out, and it was largely rebuilt after that. And despite this somewhat grisly history, I can find no ghost stories or paranormal stories associated with it whatsoever. High the vanes of Shrewsbury gleam, islanded in Severn stream. The bridges from the steepled crest cross the waters east and west. The flag of morning, conqueror's state, enters at the English gate. The vanquished eve as night prevails, blessed upon the road to Wales. Ages since my vanquished bled, round my mother's marriage bed. There the ravens feasted far, about the open house of war. When Severn down to Buildwas ran, covered with the death of man. Couched with her brother's grave, the Saxons got me on the slave. The sound of fight is silent long, that began the ancient wrong. Long the voice of tears is still, that wept of old the endless ill. In my heart it has not died, the war that sleeps on Severn's side. They cease not fighting east and west, on the marches of my breast. Here the truceless armies yet trample rolled in blood and sweat. They kill and never die, and I think that each is I. None will part us, none undo the knot that makes one's flesh of two. Sick with hatred, sick with pain, strangling When shall we be slain? When shall I be dead and rid of the wrong my father did? How long till spade and hearse put to sleep my mother's curse? And that was A.E. Houseman, the Shropshire lad, the verse known as the High Veins of Shrewsbury Gleam. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this vlog, and if you have, can you help me out a little? Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and then you'll be notified of future vlogs, but also hit the like button and make a comment, because these seem to be what determine the YouTube algorithm, and I'm being really punished by it. So whatever help I can get from you is so appreciated. It really is. When I started this, I was going to do it this section, the real magic of Java. I was going to issue maybe every 2-3 months. Now it's happening maybe every 2 or 3 days. So yeah, if you hit the bell, you'll hear about it. And thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Really heartfelt thanks.